Hey everybody, today I'm talking about my top 10 engine building board games. So engine building happens to be probably my favourite element of board gaming. Almost every one of my favourite games has some kind of degree of engine building involved. If you're not familiar with what engine building is, it's generally a kind of progression as the game goes on where you are accumulating more cards or more benefits or powers to make things more efficient and basically build up a network of actions to make things more productive. There are a lot of games like this, and I really did struggle to put this list together because there is so much competition. So if your favourite isn't in the top 10, it was probably just off the list. And no doubt in the future I will be doing another top 10 because there are so many good ones to choose from. However, these top 10 are the ones that instantly sprang to mind for me, the ones where I felt the engine building came through the strongest. So let's get started at number 10. So at number 10 I have Deus. Now Deus is a game that's almost fallen out of people's kind of sphere of board gaming really. I don't really see a lot of people talking about this one anymore, but the engine building in Deus is extremely impressive. So on the face of it, this is a pretty standard, I suppose, area control style game. A game where you're collecting resources and buying cards to play them, basically to put buildings out on the board and surround these regions to get points. Sounds pretty standard. But the level of engine building in this game does shine through tremendously well because whenever you buy one of these cards of a certain kind of building type, you will allocate them to their certain spot on your player board, and then it will trigger its ability. But as you buy more and more of these cards, then every single card you've built previously also triggers. So for example, you might have a production style building where it will say, every one of your fields is going to produce wheat. And then you might have, say, every one of your mountains produces stone. And as you imagine, you can probably build more and more of these cards. And when you take another production action, you're getting a hell of a lot of resources in one single go. And there are additional engines you can build as well, such as buying and selling resources or gaining points for certain layouts on the board. Lots of different things, even like military actions, what lets you navigate around the board quicker and surround regions that you want. A really great ramping up effect, and it does feel like this game does just take off. And some of these chains and networks you get, especially by building cards in certain orders, can really pay off and pay big dividends. So a lovely degree of engine building, really satisfying turns. That is Deus. At number 9, I have Res Arcana. Now, Res Arcana is impressive not only because of the engine building, but the way it does engine building with such few components, because this is a game where you only actually start with a hand, I believe, of 8 cards. You get a special character ability as well. And the idea is you're trying to play these cards by, again, paying resources, but you can kind of build up these kind of synergies and networks and engines of cards by triggering them in certain orders. So for example, one might say, convert one of this resources into 2 of these other resources, and then convert 2 of these resources into something else. And it's just compounding and getting bigger and bigger, and you're eventually buying locations with them and converting those locations into points. And it has this racing effect, which I think engine building and racing come together really well and mesh just generally well as 2 pure mechanisms, and Res Arcana is a solid example of that. It has some individual kind of things you can draft from round to round. You can start the game with the draft by kind of tailoring your engine to how you want it to be and decide what you're going to go for. But yeah, the way these cards line up with each other, that domino effect really does shine through massively, and it's just a really fun game that does a lot with such few components. Gorgeous artwork. It has a magical mage war kind of feel to it, but for me it works really well, and probably from the look of this game it doesn't look as Euro as it might kind of appear from the face of it, but it really is all about those mechanisms and how you're going to string those cards together to build the best engine. Lovely game. That is Res Arcana. At number 8, I have Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. This is another card-driven game where you have basically 3 columns or caravans of cards that you're going to build up throughout the game. So these cards are going to be used to, again, collect resources, and you're going to use those resources to fulfill contracts. A bit like Res Arcana, you are going for a race and trying to be the first to reach a certain amount of points. But these cards do lots of different things, such as a bit like Res Arcana again, where you are not only collecting resources, but maybe trading in some resources for others. Some are going to actually have to you're going to have to use to actually fulfill the contracts in the first place. But the cool thing about this game is that when you have these columns of cards, you only choose to activate the one on the front of each of those caravans. And then you're going to pick that card up and put it to the back. And as the game goes on, you're building more and more of these cards, adding more to these columns. And you're going to have to weigh up or plan how you're going to, or the order in which you're going to use these cards. Because, as I said, they're going to always go back to the back of the card. So doing them in order is so important, and lining up your turns can be really satisfying and can leave you feeling very clever if you do it correctly. So, for example, I might say, collect this resource, and then this caravan's going to let me convert it to that one. Then I'll use this one, and then by the time this one's done, my cash-in contract will be here, ready to be used. You can choose to build really long, extravagant caravans, or build very tight, succinct ones that have a very particular need. Brilliant game, very much a hidden gem. Nobody really talks about this one. I don't know why. Maybe it looks a bit generic, a bit beige. But the gameplay is super fun and very satisfying. And a big part of that is because of that feeling of engine building. That is Kashgar Merchants of the Silk Road at number 8. At number 7, I have Orleans. Now, Orleans is a pretty popular bag building game. So this is a game where you are a bit like a deck builder, where you do it with cards. Instead of doing that, you collect tokens, put them into your bag, and then from turn to turn, you're drawing tokens out, allocating to different spots on your player board, and potentially triggering actions based on the tokens you've drawn. Now, this game is kind of broken into 2 or maybe even more elements of engine building. The first of which tokens are you going to add to your board in the first place? Because if you want a certain strategy, you're going to have to make sure you keep drawing certain tokens from your bag. So first off, you're going to have to lean towards that way. Second off, there are certain spots where you can choose to invest in blocking off certain criteria that you'll need to trigger an action. So, for example, a certain spot might require a farmer and a sailor, but you can take these cogs and cover up one of those spots, so you no longer need the sailor, you just need the farmer. So you're getting things for cheaper, and of course that meshes well with the bag you're building in the first place. But on top of that, certain spots as well let you invest in drawing more tokens from your bag, so you're getting more actions from round to round. So all these things work together extremely well. You can end up building very efficient engines. So what would initially cost you a lot of effort to do can eventually end up costing you next to no effort to take whatsoever, and you can just do it cheaper and cheaper. Really good. The gist of the game is that you're trying to basically travel around France, picking up all these different bonus multipliers, traveling on this track and getting lots of points. But the engine building is where it shines through on top of the bag building, and it's just a wonderful Euro game, one of the best out there, and just great fun. That is Orleans at number 7. At number 6, I have Newton. Now, Newton is another game that uses several different elements of engine building to come into an entire package, really. And a big portion of this game that makes it very unique, in my opinion, to anything else out there is that the actual points engine, or the way you generate points, is based on an engine. So at the end of each round, you're going to score an amount of points depending on certain kind of lines and columns of these books you've put on your bookshelves. And the more and more these bookshelves that you build up, the more points you're going to be generating from round to round. So that in the face of it is great. So the actual whole way you're going to gain points is based on an engine. But on top of that, from round to round, you're building short-term engines by playing these cards, and these cards are all going to have different actions on them, such as traveling around the world, where you're going to collect different knowledge. You are going to kind of book up the money track. You're going to invest in new technologies and things, and research, which can get you more powers and things. So another element of engine building there. But the kind of main part of it is that when you play these cards, not only do you get the ability of the one you've just played, you also get the ability of each card you've played previously in that round. So you get these compounding engine abilities where you can end up taking really efficient turns. And at the end of the round, you are going to take one of the cards you've played and tuck it under your player board, meaning that permanently from now on, you are going to get an amped up version of that power and get it 1 strength stronger, which can be really significant. So I really love that. A really different approach. As I said, the way you generate points in this game is fantastic, and just does a great job of differentiating itself from a lot of games that are not similar to this but have the same kind of vibe as this one. And I think this is a tremendously strong game that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. That is Newton. At number 5, I have Coimbra. Now, Coimbra is a beautiful dice drafting game, as you are basically allocating dice onto, or first off drafting dice, and then putting dice onto these different kind of rows in order to collect cards. But when you collect these cards, you are going to be adding them to your engine, which means at certain points in the game, you're going to get bonuses, such as whenever you take this color of die, you get you get some money, or you get some points, or you get to climb up a track. And as the game goes on, these do really add together and ramp up, and it feels like you're getting a lot done, certainly in comparison to what you were doing at the start of the turn. The dice drafting element in this game is fantastic on its own right, where you are not only considering the pip value, because the pip values are good because they get you priority in taking the engine building cards that you want, but it means you have to pay more in order to use them in the first place. But the colour of those dice is also extremely important because it relates to a corresponding track, which will either kind of let you traverse the board and get new powers and bonuses, or it will let you get points or money or military strength, which is kind of another currency. And all these things together just come together wonderfully. A beautiful, very inviting Euro game that I think kind of throws the Euro genre on its face, because normally you'd expect these kind of games to be very bland and beige, but this one is vibrant, it's colourful, it's beautiful, and the engine building is very strong, and I think it's a really integral part of the game. And what a big portion of why I enjoy Coimbra so much is because of those compounding bonuses and different engine building elements you get throughout. Wonderful game. That is Coimbra at number 5. At number 4, I have Signorie. Now, Signorie is a pretty... I don't really hear this one talked about very much. It's quite an involved game about probably more of a Euro trope, where you are the head of an Italian family. You're trying to boost your... I suppose the credentials of your sons by giving them these professions. You're trying to marry off your daughters to these other families, collecting all these different sigils of the different families and things. But the way you draft these dice is really cool, because first off, you have to weigh up where you're going to pay, because the higher dice basically give you discounts on the fee you have to pay. But if you go over a certain threshold, then you're not going to get bonuses. But whenever you take these dice, you get to take one of 3 actions, but one of those actions allows you to unlock a certain ability on another dice allocation spot. This might sound pretty complex, and it is quite an involved game, but all that essentially means is that whenever you take a dice corresponding to that unlocked spot, then you're going to get an additional ability for free. And it absolutely works wonderfully. These abilities are all really interesting. You're gaining money or going up tracks and things, but everything is equally as good, and you just want to invest in everything. And that, again, a bit like a lot of these other games, the compounding abilities you go throughout is just fantastic. And I love the way that this one, you can't get everything done. You need to really pick and tailor which things you're going to unlock for your engine in order to play well in this one. A really involved game. I can't really go too much into it, but the engine building in this game is extremely strong, and I strongly encourage you to check this one out if you do like dice drafting. Wonderful game. This is Signorie at number 4. At number 3, I have Hansa Teutonica. Now, Hansa Teutonica is probably the purest example of engine building on this list, because the gameplay in itself is extremely simple. It's a route building game where you're trying to basically put different tokens on the board, claim cities for your own, really, build up a network of cities to get points at the end of the game. But a lot of these kind of routes that you build on the board relate to your player board, and that will let you basically boost actions that you can take. So, for example, if you complete a route between one city and another, it will let you unlock a cube from your player board, which will then mean you can take another action per turn. And as you can probably imagine, the more you do that, you can end up taking quite a few actions per turn, which is a massive difference in between what you're doing at the start of the turn. Additionally, you can unlock engine building capabilities of taking more cubes back into your pool at once, which means you have to take less turns doing so, or getting more points by building your network up, or lots of different things, even such as building in more kind of valuable spots on the board, so you get more points that way. So everything you do in this game is harmonious with the actual engine building. And it's all about kind of weighing up which bonuses you want to do, which strategy you're going to go down. Are you going to go for something really early and then focus on what you're doing on the board, or vice versa? Are you going to take a more balanced approach? Great game. This is one of the classics. I think this is like certainly a modern classic. Pure, streamlined elegance, but the fact that you can really ramp up your abilities as you go throughout the game, make things more efficient and certainly more productive, then then Hansa Teutonica is just a great example of meshing those two ideologies, because I think most engine building games are generally a bit more convoluted, have a bit more going on, simply because there is so many different ways you can implement your engine. But this one is just fundamental to the engine and the clean gameplay, and they just synergized with each other wonderfully. One of the best games ever made, Hansa Teutonica, at number 3. At number 2, I have Underwater Cities. Now, Underwater Cities is probably the example that has every kind of engine building you could imagine in one game. On the face of it, this one is a worker placement game, and I suppose a hand management game. So you're going to these different spots in order to collect resources, in order to build your little underwater cities where you're building these different domes and things, building tunnels. And you're doing that to basically get an income at the end of each round, which can be points or more resources and things. But whenever you play one of these worker placement spots or take your action, you can play a matching card from your hand. And those cards can do things such as take instant abilities, but a lot of these things contribute to your engine or your tableau of cards, which will bolster your abilities throughout the game. Some of them will give you kind of ongoing abilities that are just triggered whenever you do a certain thing, such as, if I build a tunnel, I get a point, or whenever I build a tunnel, I get a coin. Or some of them will happen in production phases, whenever your buildings now produce an extra certain or something else, or some things make things cheaper. And as these things compound, and every single action you take, you're going to end up playing another card. You can really build some efficient engines, ones that just can completely transcend the original base game that you were playing at the start of the game. And the amount of cards in your tableau that you're going to have at the end is just absolutely astonishing. And maybe weighing up all the actions that you've gathered throughout can be a bit taxing and hard to remember what you can do. But that it just adds so much mileage to this game. It adds so much scope for personalising your strategy, in tailoring what you were going for, and just. It's just a wonderful example of card play and all the different elements of engine building. As I said, instant abilities, ongoing abilities that happen at certain things, or abilities that happen in the production phases, new actions that only you can do. All of this is in this pretty simple, I suppose, engine building and a worker placement game that takes about 90 minutes to play, maybe a bit longer than that. But the way it incorporates so much into this game is phenomenal, and just the synergies, the combinations, upgrades are just absolutely mind-blowing in Underwater Cities. So if you like engine building games, this is one of the best ones ever made. Check this one out. And finally, at number 1, I have Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Now, from the face of this one, you might think this one is your typical Euro game, very beige, very generic looking, but the engine building in this game is phenomenal. A bit like a lot of these other games, this is all about collecting cards. A worker placement game is the core mechanism in this one, but the worker placement spots are interesting because they're all dictated to by a certain die value. So at the start of each round, you're going to roll 3 die, and they're going to correspond to the workers that you have. So for example, if you rolled the orange die and it was a 5, then your orange worker is going to be worth a 5. And the higher values are going to let you buy not better cards, but different cards, depending on the layout. And you are using these cards to get set collection bonuses and things, but 2 sets of these cards, or in fact 3, one of these sets of cards is basically used to boost your previous actions, such as, whenever you take this certain card, get a bonus. So first off, that's some really good engine building there, and some good little bonuses and little boosts that you can get throughout. But the other 2 basically correspond to another, or your individual player board, where you're going to end up playing cards in this row, which means that when you go to a certain other spot, you're going to trigger every card that you've previously purchased, depending on the dice value that you've allocated there. And as you accumulate more and more of these cards that can kind of generate resources or convert resources into points, convert or give you money, or give you kind of military bonuses, when you trigger these things, it is absolutely just being showered in goods, and I absolutely love that feeling. Is whenever you run your engine, I'll take 3 stone. This one lets me convert 2 stone into 4 wood. This 4 wood lets me convert 4 wood into points, and I absolutely love that kind of cascading mechanism. I think it's absolutely amazing, so satisfying. The only thing I think is an advantage. Some people complain that When the game's over, it feels like your engine's just got really juicy, and then the legs are cut out from beneath you, and the game is over. But for me, that just adds more kind of incentive to go back to this one, and it leaves me wanting more, because the combinations you can get are so much fun. And as I said, that idea of being showered in goods and resources by taking a certain action is just absolutely brilliant. This one is in my top 3 games of all time. What I said, absolutely 10 out of 10 game for me. Just phenomenal, amazing game. And when I thought of engine building games, this is the first game that I think I'm definitely going to put this one at number 1, because this is the prime example of building an engine and getting the most out of it. So brilliant game. Check this one out. No brainer if you like your Euro game. So this is just, I said, so many to choose from here. Could have made a list of at least 25, 30 games that are all amazing. But hopefully this has been a good example of which games to check out if you like the idea of kind of a game that you progress throughout. So if you have enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.